The incredible journey, how a cleaning lady spoke Korean and revealed a millionaire's hidden heart. As rain clouds gathered over the bustling suburb of Chicago, whispers filled the air. Did you hear about the cleaning lady who spoke Korean? It was a sensational tale amongst the neighborhood, feeding curiosity and intrigue. Grace, a 35-year-old immigrant, had become an unexpected bridge between two worlds. She didn't just scrub floors, she brought a warmth that melted the ice around the reclusive Mr. Thompson's lavish mansion, a mansion that stood like a fortress amidst a sea of ordinary homes, embodying the stark divide between those who had and those who struggled. Grace rose before dawn. She moved quietly around her two-bedroom apartment, tiptoeing past her sleeping children. With each gentle touch, packing their lunches and layering clothes, she whispered dreams of the future. "You'll be better than me," she'd say, a fierce hope pushing her. After sending them off to school, she donned her work attire, nothing flashy, yet dignified, before heading to the Thompson residence, where dust lay thick like shame in the corners. Inside, the mansion held secrets beneath its polished surface. Cluttered rooms oozed memories, whispers of laughter and sorrow intertwining like shadows. Grace worked methodically, a calming presence against the chaotic backdrop of Mr. Thompson's life. She discovered old photographs tucked away, each a fragment of a story lost to time, a boy, a soldier, a man shaped by the Korean War. With each swipe of her cloth, she peeled back layers to reveal a man suffocated by loneliness. As gray clouds darkened ominously outside, a storm erupted, knocking the power out across the neighborhood. Grace felt the rush of panic ripple through the streets as families huddled indoors. But instead of retreating, Grace sought a way to help. Without hesitating, she invited her neighbors to Mr. Thompson's mansion, promising warmth and safety, a beacon of light piercing through the storm. The atmosphere changed as families trickled in. In the kitchen, Grace and Mr. Thompson transformed from strangers to allies. Together, they concocted a feast of bulgogi, the sizzling sounds mingled with laughter. Traditional Korean songs floated up, washing over the room like the rain outside. In that moment, barriers dissolved. Neighbors who once whispered suspicion shared stories, and connections flourished. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as the shared laughter began to feel like home, a storm beyond the weather brewed in their community. A financial scandal erupted, targeted at Mr. Thompson. Whispers of misdeeds circulated, flinging doubts and distrust. Faces hardened, betrayal hung thick in the air. Grace found herself torn. Could she defend the man who showed her kindness when her community threatened to pull away? As her neighbors approached the mansion, uncertainty danced in Grace's heart. She knew the risk of standing up for Mr. Thompson, yet her spirit whispered courage. Would she betray a friend for the sake of fitting in? The pressure mounted like the tempest outside. A decision lingered in the air, as heavy as the storm clouds above. Would she find the strength to fight for connection and hope when everything was on the line? Her heart raced. The stakes had never been so high. The door creaked open, a hesitant crack in the storm of suspicion. Grace stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling the weight of her community's gaze pierce through her. Neighbors, once strangers, now wore expressions ranging from curiosity to unease. Their murmurs, once laced with excitement, had turned to whispers tinged with doubt. "Is it true?" a voice quavered, breaking the tense silence. Did Mr. Thompson really? Grace's heart sank. She could sense the shift in the atmosphere, the change from warm camaraderie to cold judgment. Just days ago, laughter and food had united them in that massive kitchen, but now, the air felt thick with accusations. It was then she met Mr. Thompson's eyes, clouded with despair yet burning with intensity. He had become more than an employer. He was a friend, a man caught in a storm of his own making. Mr. Thompson needs us, Grace said, her own voice steady against the swell of discontent. We've shared meals, stories, we are a community. How can we turn our backs? He asks, not just a millionaire. He asks a man with a history. The neighbors exchanged glances. Doubt wavered, but uncertainty weighed heavily. Grace felt the churning in her stomach, the pressure of expectation digging deeper. His investments there, saying he's fraudulent. Another neighbor chimed in, arms crossed defiantly. Fraud doesn't define a person, does it? Grace shot back, her spirit ignited. He opened his home to us when it mattered most. When the storm raged, he cared. So why shouldn't we give him a chance? Some faces softened, while others hardened further. It was a brave stand, but doubts still lingered. The whirlwind of financial trouble and scandal was powerful, much like the raging storm outside. In that moment, she thought of her children, their bright eyes filled with dreams. It wasn't just her heart on the line, it was also their future. Would they grow up in a world where kindness was punished? I stood by you when the power went out, came a cry from the back, an unexpected ally. It was Mrs. Kelly, the elderly woman known for her cookies and comforting hugs. I watched you bring that man into our homes. He may have wealth, but he shared it. Let us not cast stones without knowing the truth. Grace felt an exhale of relief ripple through her. More neighbors nodded, remembering the warmth of shared food and stories. Was there hope yet? Perhaps this moment could forge connections stronger than financial gain. The uncertainty still hung like humid air before an explosion. Yet, Grace felt fire in her heart. Let us not let whisperings ruin what we've built. If Mr. Thompson is innocent, he deserves our support. And if he is guilty, then we have a chance to confront it together. Her words hung in the air, alive with possibility. Mr. Thompson stepped forward, the shadows of doubt etched on his face. Perhaps some of my choices were reckless, he began, his voice steady. But let me show you the man behind the money. The room held its breath, the storm outside howling as if in response. Could this be the turning point? Could they navigate the turbulent waters ahead and emerge united rather than divided? As Grace looked at her neighbors, she realized the true storm had yet to unveil itself, and she felt the pulse of change around them all. Would the truth be a bomb or a wound? Whatever lies ahead, the journey was just beginning. The room was electric, the air crackling with tension. Grace's heart raced as she watched Mr. Thompson gather his thoughts, his brow furrowed. Still holding onto the weight of judgment in the room, he took a deep breath, the kind that steadied the soul and readied a man for battle. I have not been perfect, he said, voice rising above the whispers. I've made mistakes, yes. But what you see in the news is only one side of a complicated picture. My investments, they spiraled out of control, but that doesn't mean I stopped caring about all of you. Grace's chest tightened at his words. She could hear the desperation in his tone. It wasn't just about their community anymore. It was his life crumbled on the floor, his dreams shattered like glass. Do you remember when the old park was set to be torn down? He continued, his gaze wandering to Mrs. Kelly. I fought to keep those trees alive. I wanted a place for your children to play, to laugh, to grow up in a community that feels safe. I didn't do that for money. I did it because I love this town. A murmur danced through the crowd. Memories began to flicker among the neighbors' summer picnics, children playing, a sense of belonging. Was this the same man they were ready to toss aside? I've seen you all come together, and it's what's made this town special, he said, his voice quaking but resolute. But I need you now more than ever. Grace glanced around, reading the faces of the gathered crowd. Doubt still lingered, but there was a spark of flickering hope. They weren't just a collection of individuals, they were woven together by shared experiences, laughter, and a sense of belonging. But Mr. Thompson, a young man, protested, his voice shaky but strong. What if the stories are true? What if you're not who you claim to be? Grace felt her gut twist. It was the question everyone feared but dared not ask. Mr. Thompson's face paled, but something in his eyes ignited with defiance. If I've faltered in business, it has nothing to do with how I feel about this community, he replied, a thin edge of passion marking his words. You are my family. A hush enveloped the room as he stepped forward, vulnerability etched into his features. I promise you this. If you stand with me, we will address the truth together. Whatever it may be. Tension rippled through the crowd as whispers transitioned to quiet deliberations. There was a collective weighing of options, hearts beating faster. Just when it seemed they might find common ground, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by a shout. Mr. Thompson, you need to see this. The door swung open to reveal a reporter, breathless and keen-eyed, clutching a stack of papers. We have new evidence regarding the allegations. It's explosive. The atmosphere shifted again, anxiety swirling like a storm, threatening to drown their tentative unity. Grace exchanged frantic glances with Mr. Thompson, sensing the tumult of emotions that stirred beneath the surface. Would his honesty stand? Would the community hold firm in its support? What could this mean? She whispered to herself. At that moment, everything hung in the balance. The truth, whatever its form, threatened to spill over into chaos. Would they weather the storm together, or would they be swept apart by the harsh winds of uncertainty? As the reporter stepped further into the room, everyone held their breath, trapped in a moment fraught with impending revelation. What new truths awaited them, and could they really hold their community together when it felt like the ground might fall away beneath them? The journey was just beginning, but the path now seemed darker than before. The room pulsed with anticipation as the reporter positioned himself in front of Mr. Thompson, his eyes darting between the crowd and the papers in his hand. The tension was palpable, a thick fog of anxiety pressing down on everyone. Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. She felt as if she were on a precipice, ready to jump but unsure of the landing. Ladies and gentlemen, the reporter began, his voice steady yet urgent. I have uncovered documents that correlate with several of the financial claims being made against Mr. Thompson. These reveal discrepancies in his dealings over the last 5 years. Discrepancies that raise concerning questions. Gasps filled the room, the collective breath of the crowd hitching at the mention of discrepancies. Grace's stomach dropped. Was he scamming them? Had all those years of service been a cover for greed? Mr. Thompson's expression transformed into one of steely resolve. Please, give me a moment, he interrupted, stepping toward the reporter. What exactly are you saying? The reporter cleared his throat, unfurling the papers like a banner. These documents indicate that funds from community projects were misallocated. A portion that should have gone toward public welfare instead went into personal accounts. Unease rippled through the crowd. Whispers echoed off the walls, shifting from surprise to outrage. Grace watched as Mrs. Kelly's face twisted in disbelief. This can't be true, she shouted, desperation lacing her voice. He built the playground. He saved our park. I know, Mr. Thompson responded, his voice cracking under the weight of the moment. But if I have made decisions that seem wrong, it was never out of malice. It was the pressure of trying to uphold everything. He paused, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I just wanted to protect our community. The raw emotion in his voice cut through the murmurs. A reminder of their shared history washed over the room. Grace felt her heart tug. Was it possible that Mr. Thompson had lost his way in an attempt to do good? Before reason could take root in the crowd, the reporter continued. But all that doesn't change the fact that you have been managing finances irresponsibly. It's not just about misallocation. These documents point to possible illegal activities. That's not all there is. Grace found herself shouting before she could process the words. The room turned, surprised by her sudden burst. We cannot lose sight of who he is to this community. Remember the Thanksgiving dinners? The town cleanups? This is bigger than paperwork. Her voice held a shaky conviction, propelled by the memories of unity they had forged together. The crowd listened, wavering between doubt and loyalty. Grace is right, someone said from the back, her words hesitant yet determined. He has more than his mistakes. He has given us so much. The energy in the room shifted again, the tide slowly turning. Mr. Thompson's eyes met Grace's, a flicker of hope igniting within them. I need you to trust me. I will clear this up. I will make this right. But it starts with you believing in me and our town. The reporter stood unyielding, papers clutched tightly. And how can we trust that you won't repeat these mistakes? The air grew dense, sweat prickling Grace's back as the multitude shifted uncomfortably. She realized this was more than just about Mr. Thompson. It was a crossroad for the community itself. "Because I believe in second chances," she said, her voice stronger this time. "And I know the heart of this town beats for forgiveness." But the reporter wasn't finished. "And what if it's not just reckless decisions? What if there's more you're hiding?" A silence descended, heavy with implication. Fearful glances exchanged between neighbors suggested that the explosion wasn't quite done yet. Each person waited for the other to respond as the darkness loomed larger. Grace bit her lip, heart pounding. What more could there be? Would they discover a deeper betrayal? The moment hung in the air, a fragile thread suspended above uncertainty. Was this the beginning of a new chapter, or had they only just scratched the surface of a much darker truth? She held her breath, realizing that sometimes the light shines brightest in the shadows, and just then, the door creaked open again, allowing a gust of freezing wind into the warmth of the room. What or who was going to walk in next? The heavy door swung open, and the room collectively gasped. A woman stood at the entrance, her silhouette sharp against the backdrop of winter's chill. She was bundled in a vibrant red coat, contrasting starkly with the gray tones of the crowd. For a moment, Grace's heart soared with hope. Perhaps this was a savior entering, a voice of reason. As the woman stepped inside, the worn heels of her boots clicked against the wooden floor, each sound echoing off the walls like an urgent pulse. Her ebony hair fell loosely around her shoulders, framing a face marked by experience and quiet strength. Grace recognized her immediately. It was Mrs. Lee, the kind cleaning lady from the community center who had devoted countless hours scrubbing floors and organizing events. "Excuse me," Mrs. Lee called out, her accent thick yet melodic. The crowd split as she moved closer to the front, unwavering in her purpose. I have something to say." The reporter raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "And who might you be?" "I am nobody special," she replied, a gentle smile touching her lips. "But I have seen things. I have seen Mr. Thompson do things that many have not." The skepticism in the room shifted. Grace felt it, that familiar flicker of intrigue. Mrs. Lee wasn't just any voice. She was part of the backdrop, the unseen hands that had helped shape their community. "Please go on," Mr. Thompson encouraged, his voice thick with anticipation. Mrs. Lee took a breath, gathering her thoughts. "When I clean at the center, I find papers notes that shouldn't be there. For years, I thought I was just cleaning up others' messes. But I saw Mr. Thompson bringing in bags and bags of supplies for families who needed help. He used his own money when the funds ran low, even if no one noticed." The air shifted once more. Hope and confusion intertwined. Grace glanced at the reporter, who looked less confident now. "And what are the allegations?" he pressed, his voice a bit more tentative. "Those papers you have what you call discrepancies," Mrs. Lee continued, her voice rising with determination. "I don't know all details, but I do know Mr. Thompson would never steal from families. He fought for us sometimes right under the table, because he believed it was more important than the red tape." Mr. Thompson lowered his head, shame layering his features. "I thought I was saving our community," he whispered, the conviction in his voice now tangled with regret. Mrs. Lee stepped forward, a fervent fire in her eyes. "It does not excuse the mistakes he made, but it shows the heart behind those actions. We all have our reasons. I have my past, too. It's not easy." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, slowly transforming suspicion into contemplation. Grace felt a wave of belief rush within her. Perhaps this was the turning point they needed to recalibrate their perception. "We've all made mistakes," Grace added, her voice wrapping around the growing warmth in the air. "It's in owning them where we grow." The tension in the room began to evaporate as Mrs. Lee's honesty permeated the hearts of her neighbors. Together, they were collectively fighting the narratives that had defined their community. But just as hope started to hover like a delicate thread, the crowd's attention snapped back to the reporter. "But what about the deeper secrets?" he challenged. "What about the potential of fraud? What if this isn't just about small mistakes?" The heartbeat of the room stilled, questions looming like storm clouds. Grace's breath caught. What if they were again dropped into a pit of betrayal? The whispers returned as unease filtered through the crowd. Mrs. Lee's strong voice pierced the noise. We can't let fear silence us or cloud our judgment. If there is more to discover, let us join together and uncover it. Together, we can face the darkness. Her determination sparked a fire in Grace's chest. In that moment of communal resolve, Grace realized that they were standing on the edge of a defining journey. They were crafting their own story, one that could either redeem or demolish the man who had been a pillar. Would they gather strength to seek out the truth, no matter how painful? The tension built again, thick and waiting, as they stood on the cusp of an emotional reckoning. Each heartbeat pulsed with uncertainty, and Grace's gaze shifted from Mr. Thompson to Mrs. Lee, to the crowd that held their breath. What truths remained hidden, and how deep could the rabbit hole go? As the chill of the room began to dissipate, the promise of answers loomed just ahead, casting its shadows on the choices they were about to make. The room felt electric, charged with anticipation as Mrs. Lee's words hung in the air. Grace could sense the weight of their shared history pressing down on them, urging them to confront a truth that had long been buried. The atmosphere shifted yet again, a fragile balance teetering on the edge of revelation. Look around, Mrs. Lee continued, her gaze scanning the faces in the crowd. We are a community. We can't let fear make us turn against one another. We must listen. Her voice, steady and unwavering, ignited flickers of hope across the room. Mr. Thompson's shoulders slumped, the shame pinching his features. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought I was helping, he confessed, each word heavy with regret. His eyes searched for connection, a flicker of understanding. But maybe I got lost in the process. Mrs. Lee stepped closer, the warmth of her presence wrapping around him like a comfort blanket. We've all lost our way at times, Mr. Thompson. I've made choices in my life that I regret. It's part of being human. Grace could almost feel the crowd shift. The walls of skepticism started to crack, revealing a glimmer of understanding. One by one, heads nodded. Even the reporter looked taken aback, his skepticism wavering. Human, Grace whispered to herself. It was an easy word, yet it carried so much weight. They weren't just talking about Mr. Thompson's actions. They were confronting every misstep, every lapse in judgment, every broken promise. She looked at him, truly looked, and saw a layer of grief beneath the facade of the businessman. A man who had tried so hard to lift others that he had lost sight of himself in the process. Is it really about what someone has done, or isn't it more about who they are? She called out, her own voice trembling slightly. Could we forgive Mr. Thompson if he pays us back in actions rather than words? Silence enveloped them momentarily, and in that pause, something shifted. A quiet resolve bubbled to the surface as neighbors shared uncertain glances, weighing the truth against the burdens of their own lives. That's the challenge, isn't it? Spoke a voice from the back. It was Maria, a single mother from the neighborhood. We need to find a way to move forward, not just point fingers. We bear the weight of this community together. A murmur of agreement started to rise, the sound rolling through the room like a wave. Grace felt her heart swell. Perhaps they could steer this narrative in a different direction. And maybe, Maria continued, we can help him make things right. Together. But then the door creaked open again, and the faint sound of a bell chimed harsh and sharp. Everyone turned, faces rounding in confusion. A tall man, with a coat that seemed far too formal for the setting, stepped inside. His eyes darted around, analyzing the crowd with an intensity that felt invasive. What's going on here? He demanded, his voice cutting through the tentative atmosphere like a knife. The tension reignited, the hopeful energy dissipating as quickly as it had formed. Who are you? Mrs. Lee approached, her protective instincts rising. We are discussing our community, our truths. Community? Is that what you call it? The man laughed, a sound that carried derision. You've no idea what's really at stake, do you? Mr. Thompson's mistakes run far deeper than you think. Gasps erupted, each reaction snapping like a taut wire, dragging suspicion back into the forefront. Grace's heart raced. What secrets could he possibly reveal? The man took a step forward, eyes flashing with something almost predatory. You say you want the truth? Then you better brace yourselves. What had they invited into their midst? The heartbeat of the room quickened, pulsing with fear and curiosity, pushing them toward an unknown abyss. They had sought resolution, but had they opened a door to chaos instead? The shadows loomed deeper, and as the uncertainty swirled, Grace could feel a common thread pulling them into a storm. What truths were about to unravel, and could they hold on as a community to discover them? The man surveyed the room, his gaze lingering on each person, each face strained with questions. He leaned slightly forward, letting his coat hang open just enough to reveal a flashy badge pinned to his lapel. "Detective Harrington," he announced, and a ripple of apprehension swept through the crowd. "Why are you here?" Mr. Thompson's voice broke, a plea disguised in suspicion. "What do you want from us?" Harrington straightened, a smirk curling on his lips. "I'm here because apparently this community you hold so dear has some skeletons in its closet." He turned slowly, letting the weight of his words sink in. "And Mr. Thompson, you might be the one holding the door wide open." Grace felt the air grow heavy, like a blanket draping over her shoulders. The weight of fear mingled with confusion, brewing a storm she could almost taste. She searched the crowd, noting the flicker of uncertainty on familiar faces, friends, neighbors, people she'd shared meals and laughter with. Were they truly tangled in something deeper than mere misunderstanding? "Why don't you tell us what you know?" Mrs. Lee stood her ground. Her voice, though shaking slightly, held a fierceness. "We need to hear the truth, regardless of how uncomfortable it may be." Harrington chuckled, as if savoring the moment of tension. "Comfort? Believe me, that's the least of your worries. You think this is all about bad business decisions? Think again." He paused, letting the words dangle. Grace felt her heart race, as her mind painted a picture of what this could mean. What could possibly be hiding behind Thompson's facade? Was it something that would tear their community apart? "Let me guess," Harrington continued, leaning in. "You all didn't hear about the missing funds? The way the system has been rigged so certain people, well, they don't have to play by the rules." No one spoke. The air thickened, every breath echoing with dread. Grace sensed that the very walls of their community were trembling, threatened by the shadows of betrayal. Whispers began to ripple, questions born from fear rising to the surface. "Tell us more," one voice shouted, emboldened by the collective pulse of curiosity. "We deserve to know what's really happening," shouted another. "Exactly," Harrington said, his features sharpening. "You deserve to know. You deserve to know who's been benefiting from your plight, and why Mr. Thompson's been so desperate to keep it hidden." A shiver ran through Grace as the realization struck her. Could any of this be tied to the sacrifices so many had made for a brighter future? Did they really fall prey to someone else's greed, while their own lives slipped through their fingers? "What is your proof?" Maria challenged, stepping forward defiantly. "You can't just walk in here and destroy lives without evidence." Harrington shrugged, a shadow flickering in his eyes. "Oh, I've got proof aplenty. But whether it holds up against the bonds you people have forged, well, that's the part that keeps me entertained. You see, it's easy to blame someone when things go wrong. But when push comes to shove, how far are you willing to go for each other?" Grace felt a wave of emotion crashing over her. There it was, a challenge wrapped in a question that cut deep. Was this about more than just Mr. Thompson's fate? Were they ready to face their own shortcomings, their own fears? The room lulled, energy crackling as uncertainty mixed with an urgent need for unity. Then Harrington stepped back, surveying the scene with cold satisfaction, and for a moment, time hung suspended in the air, the crowd suspended between hope and despair. "You have a choice to make," he stated. "Will you confront the lies, or let your loyalty blind you to the truth?" Grace closed her eyes, drawing strength from a place that felt all too familiar. The question hung there: could they really come together to confront whatever darkness lay ahead? As she opened her eyes, she met Mr. Thompson's gaze, and in it, she saw not just fear, but an acknowledgement of their shared humanity. What hope remained in the face of the unknown? Would they learn to stand united, or would fear drive them apart? As Harrington's piercing eyes bore into theirs, the echo of a single truth resonated in her heart, daring them to respond. In that moment, The next question crystallized in the air: would they stand together, or would the choice to unravel their ties lead to their downfall? The stillness in the room seemed to stretch endlessly, each second marked by the anxious beats of hearts pounding in fear and uncertainty. Detective Harrington's gaze swept over them, drinking in their discomfort as if it were some sweet elixir. Grace felt the weight of her friend's stares pressing against her, the twisted knot in her stomach tightening as she considered their fragile unity. "Let us not act like we're the ones on trial here," Mr. Thompson finally barked, defensively straightening his posture. His eyes darted from Harrington to the crowd, searching for support. "We deserve respect." "Speak plainly, detective." "Respect is earned, Mr. Thompson," Harrington replied coolly, leaning against the wall, his tone dripping with mockery. "And what do you think people do when respect is squandered? They talk. They whisper." He gestured at the community members. "You've built your little empire of trust, but it's only as strong as the secrets you keep. Did you think no one would notice?" As murmurs swirled around her, Grace was struck by the sharp contrast of trust and betrayal. What had once felt like a safe haven was turning into an echo chamber of suspicion and fear. She felt the urgency to act, not just for herself but for those she loved. For the community she had always called home. "Enough," Maria shouted, injecting with a fierce intensity that cut through the chatter. "If there's a problem, we need to face it together." Her voice broke slightly, betraying her own fear. "But we won't let this man divide us with his games. We will stand united, no matter what comes out," Grace chimed in, stepping forward with newfound resolve. The room fell silent, their eyes shifting between Harrington and the two women who dared to confront the looming storm. Harrington watched with a smirk, his arms crossed, as if relishing the show. "Now, this is interesting. Unity against the truth? Isn't that just a recipe for disaster? Or a chance to change things?" Grace shot back, feeling the swell of courage in her chest. "This could be our moment to find out what has been happening in the shadows. Not just for us, but for every one of us in this room. We can't shy away anymore." As she spoke, the atmosphere began to shift. Faces that had been drawn in fear now ignited with a spark of determination. This was their moment. It felt like a rallying cry, pushing against the suffocating fear that had wrapped around their hearts like a vice. "All right then," Harrington said, his eyes narrowing with interest. "Let us say I lay the proof on the table. If you all want to face it together, let us see what that bond can truly withstand. We'll start with what really happened to the funds, names, dates, and a timeline that peel back those layers you all seem so attached to. Do it." It was Maria again, her voice steady and strong. "Whatever we're facing, we'll face it together." The tension cracked like dry wood, and for a fleeting moment, Grace felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe they could unravel the secrets that bound them, and out of that chaos, forge an even stronger bond. Harrington took a deep breath before reaching into his coat, pulling out a few crisp sheets of paper. The crowd leaned in closer, breath held in expectation. Whatever it was, it could change everything, and that was both terrifying and electrifying. Then abruptly, there was a commotion by the door. A figure stumbled in. It was Mrs. Kim, the local cleaner. She dropped her mop, eyes wide with panic. "You have to listen. There's something I found, something I overheard." Every eye turned toward her, and the weight of the moment shifted again, curiosity mingling with the fresh scent of unease. Could this be the breakthrough? Or the unraveling of everything they had fought to protect? As Grace looked at Mrs. Kim, a knot of hope and fear twisted tightly in her chest. If Mrs. Kim had information, it could change the course of their confrontation, but would it bring them closer together or further apart? "Speak quickly," Harrington commanded, looming larger than life, ready to exploit whatever truth lay beneath her urgency. And as Mrs. Kim opened her mouth to speak, the room held its breath, on the brink of something that could change everything. How much were they willing to risk in the search for truth? "Mrs. Kim, what did you overhear?" Grace urged, her voice barely above a whisper, almost drowned out by the heavy silence. The eyes of everyone in the room were trained on the frail woman, who wavered with the weight of her revelation. She took a shaky breath, visibly gathering her thoughts. I was cleaning the office after the meeting last night. I could hear them talking people you know. Her gaze darted from Grace to Harrington, then back again, as if she were unsure of who to trust. What people? Harrington pressed, stepping forward. His eagerness was palpable. Mr. Thompson, and she hesitated, fear flickering in her expression, and someone else. A man I don't recognize. As a collective gasp rose in the room, Grace's heart pounded. What were they saying? They were discussing the funds. They mentioned transferring money, talking about covering tracks. I thought it was important, Mrs. Kim's voice quavered, but then they heard my mop. I ran before they saw me. Covering tracks? Mr. Thompson interjected, his voice rising dangerously. What are you implying? That I'm involved in something illegal? It's not just about you, Grace stated, her pulse racing. If there is something happening behind closed doors, then we all deserve to know. Harrington's eyes gleamed in the dim light. Looks like our cleaning lady found herself in quite the scandal. His smirk returned, relishing the unfolding chaos. Ignoring him, Grace focused on Mrs. Kim. How sure are you about what you heard? I'm not sure of everything, but they were scared. Scared of being found out, Mrs. Kim replied, her hands trembling. And I think there is more. I saw you, Grace, when you were talking to the board. I wanted to protect you. A good heart like yours shouldn't suffer because of this. With each word, the tension coiled deeper in Grace's chest. Did Mrs. Kim really believe they could uncover the truth? Just then, whispers erupted throughout the room as people grappled with their own insecurities, mistrust leaching into the air like a fog. Harrington, sensing the growing unease, capitalized on it. It seems we're at an impasse. The only way forward is to see what lies beneath this facade of trust surrounding you. His voice was smooth and calculated, a predator circling its prey. Don't you dare make this about us. Maria shouted, her courage revitalized. If we're going to confront this mess, it starts with you showing us everything you have. Grace looked around at her friends, their faces lit with a mix of dread and determination. It was clear that the path ahead would not be easy, but it was necessary. They had waited too long to unearth the truth. Mrs. Kim, we could use your help. If you have any leads or know anyone else who might know something. Grace began, her heart beating frantically with hope. I can try to remember more, Mrs. Kim nodded, her resolve steadying. But we shouldn't wait. If they're covering up something, they might try to silence me again. Harrington laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Silencing someone won't be an issue if someone stands in your way, Mrs. Kim. But luckily for you, I'm here to protect your interests. Why would I let you disappear? Grace felt a chill sweep over her as Harrington's words hung thickly in the room. What incentives did he have? What was his endgame? Detective Harrington, what do you really want? Mr. Thompson ventured, a hint of frailty leaking into his bravado. Harrington leaned forward, eyes glinting, and grinned. Why, I simply want everyone to be honest. And it seems we're finally getting to the truth. The air pulsed with tension, and Grace realized they were standing on an edge. A leap forward could yield clarity, or it could shatter their already fragile community. As silence enveloped them again, she felt the weight of their collective decision hanging before them. Would they plunge into the unknown? The room, thick with uncertainty, breathed deeply, waiting for what would happen next. Grace glanced back at Mrs. Kim, her heart quaking. If they were to find the truth, how far would they have to go? Let us gather everyone we can. Trust, she finally suggested, determination spilling from her lips. But what she didn't expect was that trust would fray at the seams before their very eyes. Would they be ready for the truths that lay hidden in the shadows? The atmosphere crackled, each moment stretching as tension built relentlessly. Grace felt the gathered neighborhood hold its breath, their future hanging on the precipice of a decision. The whispers of distrust lingered like smoke, but a flicker of courage ignited within her. They were in this together, each faced with the daunting task of confronting the truth standing menacingly before them. Let us not run from this anymore, she said, her voice steady and low. We need to seek the truth, but together. We need to unite against the fear trying to tear us apart. Mr. Thompson's eyes flickered with admiration. Gratitude swelled in his chest, a sensation he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. Around the room, something shifted. Neighbors began to nod, uncertain glances transforming into a united front. Together, they could face whatever shadows awaited them. "I will not let fear silence us," Mrs. Lee echoed, her voice rising as strength radiated through her. "We owe it to ourselves to unveil the truth." Harrington observed silently, his expression revealing nothing as Grace turned her focus back to Mrs. Kim. "Can we figure out who is at the meeting? Who else knows more?" She was a beacon, her heart beating fast, desperate for action. "We can't afford to wait." "I know a few people," Mrs. Kim replied, confidence gathering in her voice. "They'll help. They'll talk." Relief washed over Grace. Hope infected her spirit as she witnessed the birth of camaraderie and courage taking root. The wind outside howled, mirroring the storm brewing in the hearts of their community. "Let us meet back here tomorrow. We will start building our story," Grace insisted, her voice unwavering. "The truth won't shine just by wishing it to." Everyone dispersed slowly, eyes filled with embers of hope. Peaceful conversations erupted hallways, pushing away the shadows that had threatened to divide them. As Grace walked to her small apartment later, exhaustion tugged at her limbs, but there was a lightness in her heart. The next day, the mansion stood as a fortress of gathering, the various voices of the community mingled within its halls. Grace watched as families entered, determination etched on each face. The storm didn't seem nearly as threatening when united against it. When Mrs. Kim spoke to the group, hearts fluttered with tension, but hope danced above the clouds of doubt. "I've contacted those who know, who've seen things," she revealed, her hands shaking lightly as she gestured. "Together, we can bring justice. We can uncover the truth about the funds." One by one, tales emerged, previously hidden stories of kindness and dubious choices intertwining like the threads of a tapestry. With each account shared, Grace felt the bonds of community deepen, a collective heartbeat strengthening with purpose. Every shared struggle reminded each member of their shared humanity. They pored over each detail, piece by piece. Questions that had once lingered in the corners of their minds now took shape. It was empowering, grounding them. "We will not let fear define us or tear us apart anymore," Grace stated, her voice ringing clear. A week passed, and the truth emerged like dawn breaking through the night. Mr. Thompson stood before them, stripped of pretense but not of dignity. "I've messed up. I've lost sight of what truly mattered," he admitted, tears pooling in his eyes. "But you've made me realize this community is my family, and I need to regain your trust." The room murmured, whispers of empathy washed over them. "Every mistake can teach us," Grace spoke, her heart swelling with hope. "Together, we can forgive but also grow stronger." As the crowd spoke, no longer merely a collection of individuals, connections emerged. Forgiveness swept like a gentle breeze, lifting everyone higher than the clouds shadowing their hearts. They vowed to confront loss, restore balance, and seek reparations as a united force. In that moment, side by side, they created a momentous shift, breaking down barriers built on years of uncertainty. They would face fracture and betrayal, but would emerge whole, bound by trust. Grace and Mr. Thompson shared a radiant smile, tears sparkling, symbols of renewal that promised to steer their path forward. A new day dawned, marking the legacy of a community committed to vulnerability, resilience, and love. As the radiant sun set on their collective journey, people stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts swelling with triumph. They had not just faced the storm, they had transformed into a powerful alliance ready to tackle the uncertainties ahead. This wasn't just about revelations anymore. It was about connection, love, and the power to overcome. The final curtain fell on doubt, replaced by a chorus of confidence ringing through the streets, carrying whispers of change. Grace's heart brimmed with peace, knowing they were no longer defined by their fears, but rather by their courage to rise together in the face of adversity. This community had transformed, and as they held hands under the twilight sky, Grace marveled at the beauty of human connection. With the world ahead still uncharted, they would journey forth together, and now, there's something crucial to talk about. You need to subscribe to this channel immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories filled with inspiration. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the journey of positivity and connection. Comment below and share your reactions. What does this story mean to you? Don't wait not even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who could use this transformation reminder. You're not just viewers, you are part of this movement of community and love. Let us carry this torch together.